everyone, my name is Holly, and in today's video I'm here to share with you all the books I read in the last month. As you all know, I had a challenge going on throughout the month of March called March Reading Madness, where I was trying to read as much as possible in that span of time, and I did read a total of 8 books, which I'm super proud of with the mess that's happening in the world right now. But during the second half of March, I definitely found it so much harder to focus on things. So I do have a DNF pile here, as well as 2 favorites, which is very exciting. One very unexpected favorite, which I am so pumped to talk about. So let's go ahead and start this video off on a good note and start with one of my new favorite books, and that is Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Garcia. This is one of the most creepiest and weirdest books I have read in such a long time. The story immediately opens up introducing us to Noemi, our main character, who is this beautiful woman who is also very vain, and she knows it. It makes her very feisty. I don't think she's supposed to be likable, which is what made me like her even more. She receives a very strange letter from her cousin Catalina, who states that she is being poisoned by her husband and something is very wrong at High Place, which is the mansion that she is staying at, and that she needs to be saved. Noemi travels to this mansion, which is like this Gothic Mexican 1950s mansion, to investigate and see if Catalina really needs help. The entire time that I was reading this, I was at the edge of my seat, and you just constantly wonder, like, what the heck is really going on behind the walls. This big family lives there, and they are all creepy as hell and extremely strict. Some of the rules include no smoking, and you're not allowed to use hot water while you're taking a bath, you can't go down to the local town, and also you have to be completely silent during dinner. And you better be a respectful young lady. The atmosphere just hits the mark for me on all levels. There is a whisper of like a family curse, and a house that just seems like it has a life of its own. If you're looking for a gothic horror novel, then look no further. I already have this book pre-ordered, and I cannot wait to get my hands on a physical copy. I will be putting it directly beside the 10,000 Doors of January, where it deserves to be. 5 out of 5 stars. This is a new favorite book of mine, and it's not even fantasy. And then I read Semiosis by Sue Burke. This is a first contact with aliens sci-fi. This story is all about a group of colonists, about 30 people, who decide to leave Earth and create a new utopia on a foreign planet that they call Pax. It is very Earth-like, which is why they chose to move there, and they find out that the plants are sentient. They begin to rebel, and they begin to cause trouble, as well as the new society that is being built. When I was reading this, I was so into it. Those first 30 pages really set up the mood, and I thought for sure I knew where it was going, but this book actually wasn't at all what I expected it to be. I kind of thought it was going to be more horror or thriller, but it's kind of like a slice of life on a foreign planet. The science behind the plants was so incredibly interesting, but I wasn't overly sold on the characters or even like the episodic structure. It's actually told in changing point of views over a century, so every 50 pages or so, it'll change to a brand new character in a new family generation. So it was really hard for me to settle into the story, and once you did get settled and felt comfortable, it would just completely change the timeline about 20 years later, and it kind of threw me off for a little bit. But this world, if you are fascinated by like alien ecosystem and just learning about these humans trying to survive on this foreign planet and trying to figure out like what they can eat, overall I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars, and I am very happy to have finally gotten this book off my TBR when I've been meaning to read it for years. Going into a very different direction, to a book that kind of disappointed me. I don't know, I have very weird feelings toward it, and that is Dreams of the Dark Sky by Tina LeCount-Myers. This is the second book to The Song of All, which is a book that I read last month. It's an adult fantasy, and it was a huge surprise to me. I really enjoyed it. This one is a totally different vibe, unfortunately. The first one was just so adventurous, so outdoorsy, full of characters that I absolutely loved, and it was just so wholesome. But in the sequel, you are very confined, and there are so so many conversations that just drag on a little bit too long. Also, the two main characters have the emotions of a roller coaster, and it really shows in the second half of this book. They are just constantly arguing, and I think it really slowed the plot down. I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars, which it's not like I hated this book 2 out of 5 stars. The series still has a very special place in my heart. If you're looking for like a war between mortals and immortals in like a snowy environment, I highly recommend at least picking up the Song of All because it was amazing. But this one is definitely like slower pace story, and I'll still be flipping it, so let's go do that. And then I picked up Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. I actually have a complete, entire separate video of my review for this book. I highly recommend checking it out. I'll link it down below for you. So I'm going to keep this a little bit short, but I loved this so much. This takes place centuries after The Hero of Ages. This book follows a retired lawman after he has a very traumatic experience in the Roughs, which is kind of a place that pays homage to the American Old West. He returns to the city and assumes his rightful role as Lord, and then he gets involved in this investigation that involves kidnappings and thievery. I could read this book all freaking day. I will admit it was a little bit disorienting at the beginning because this book does take place 300 years after the end of the original Mistborn trilogy. So the world has definitely changed and has very much matured. Regardless of this, it holds the scent, and it was so easy to feel comfortable in this world again. It provides amazing moments and banter when it comes to these new characters. It also plunges into a really exciting plot line. The action scenes were as marvelous as always and different, which is really funny to say because we're all used to this magic system that involves digesting metals, but there is a new part of that magic system in here, and it was really refreshing. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars, and I pretty much proved a few of you wrong who said that I wouldn't enjoy this, reading it so closely to my read of the Mistborn trilogy. Well, I loved it so freaking much. But then things took a turn, and I read Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson, which is book 2 in this era, technically book 5. I found this book to be so freaking slow. In fact, I read The Alloy of Law, and it took me about 2 or 3 days to finish. This took me 2.5 weeks. It wasn't until the last 20% or so where I got extremely invested, and then it was basically over. There's just something lacking in the characters in this, and even Wayne, who's like the comic relief, he kind of just left the chat. And even certain chapters, the way that they played out, I just felt like they were kind of mechanical. Like, this book I just found to be so slow, and it makes me so sad that I feel that way. I mean, the main plot is serviceable and gives Sanderson great opportunity to develop these characters like Marcy. She had amazing character development in this, and start to incorporate a even larger overall picture for Wax's story. Like, I'm so curious on where the heck his character is going to go, which I can't wait to read Bands of Mourning, even though I gave this 2 out of 5 stars, unfortunately, but I'm still like loving the series. But with overall my enjoyment, 2 stars. That ending though. That ending. Okay, so next we're going to move on to one of the books that I DNF'd, and that was A Witch in Time by Constance Sayers. I mentioned my feelings about this book on Goodreads, and I sometimes hate doing that. I shouldn't have done it in the first place. But I'm just going to be honest, this book made me feel very uncomfortable when it came to the very detailed sex scene between a 15-year-old and a 40-year-old man. Yes, it takes place in the 1800s. Yes, that was common back then, and I hate it when people use that excuse so much because I wasn't born in the 1800s, I'm not used to this. And if something made me feel uncomfortable, it made me feel uncomfortable. And that is the whole entire plot. The woman, aka the 15-year-old, and man being cursed throughout multiple lifetimes, and she dies tragically in every lifetime, and they have to fall back in love. But I was just like, I could care less for you two. You guys can just get hit by a bus. I don't care. I honestly hope other people who read this find the moral of the story. I hope you enjoy it, but for me personally, I didn't care anymore. So as you can tell, from here my month kind of went downhill, and I decided to divert away from my original TBR, so I decided to pick up Shielded by Kaylin Flanders. This is a YA fantasy that comes out in July, and I was very intrigued by it, especially with that beautiful cover. This is a very simplistic and charming read all about a girl who is forced to marry a prince from another kingdom, and as her party is traveling to go to that kingdom, they are attacked by a group of very mysterious mages. This one really reminded me of Throne of Glass and the Kiss of Deception in a way. The magic system really captured my attention, as well as the cultures between two of the main kingdoms. The main one is kind of snowy and cold, and everyone has fair skin and light hair, and then the other kingdom is full of bright colors and everyone has dark skin and dark hair. It kind of had like an Italian vibe to it, and I really liked that. And there's even an enchanted forest mystery within this book that I really enjoyed, but it's definitely not without its flaws. This story is set in a cat and mouse pace. There is a lot of hiding. Characters are hiding and waiting out on an enemy to leave, and then there's a chase that happens, and then there's more hiding. And those chase scenes really get your adrenaline pumping, but then it kind of becomes unsatisfying when there's like 2 chapters where their characters are just hiding in a fireplace. And when there was a fight scene thrown in, it was written very well, and I guess I just really wanted more of that. Also, there was a couple really infuriating plot lines. For instance, a character gets poisoned within the castle, and then the next day, the king, the queen, the heir, and pretty much all of the palace guards leave. And they leave their 2 little girls in this castle pretty much alone, while there is someone in this castle who has poisoned someone. Overall, I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. I definitely think this is a book that you should give it a chance at least. It's very enjoyable, and I think most people will like it, but it definitely has like that YA fantasy vibe to it. And this part of the month, I was really not feeling reading and not being able to focus, so I decided to pick up a graphic novel, and that is Displacement by Kiku Hughes. This is a graphic novel that comes out in August, so if you're interested, you have a bit of a wait for it, but it is a great dose of education and enlightenment when it comes to the Japanese incarceration camps in the 1940s. So if you're interested in that part of history, I highly recommend this because it's kind of memoir based, and this author does a fantastic job describing her grandmother's experiences. But it's basically told through Kiku Hughes, like her character is time traveling to these camps, and she's personally experiencing what her grandmother experienced, and she's even like seeing her grandmother as a little girl, and it's a very bittersweet and riveting tale. I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. It was a very light read in a sense that it goes very fast. Might as well show you some of the artwork too. It's very simple, but it really works well for the story. Alrighty, the final book I have here is the last DNF, and it's very unfortunate, but I ended up DNFing Ship of Smoke and Steel by Django Wexler. Really quick, I want to mention that I am currently reading this author's newest book that comes out in July, Ashes of the Sun. I got an ARC and I'm reading it right now, and it is a million times better than this. The basic simplistic plotline of this is our main character is tasked to take control of a ghost ship, pretty much, but the reason for me DNFing this is I could not stand the main character. She is just so like, there is a reason for her to be this way, but I just personally can't read a character like that. Like, she has every right to be this mean, evil, like, not care about anyone else around her kind of personality, and yeah, she has a reason to be like that, but I just don't like reading characters that are so incredibly heartless. It'll be in an unhaul video soon. Alrighty, so those are all the books that I have read in the last month. Tell me down below if you have read any of these. I would love to know, or tell me the last book that you read. I would love to know that too. Go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it, because it helps me out so much. And go ahead and subscribe. I upload videos every single week. Follow me on Instagram at Holly Hearts Books and on Twitter at Holly Niece. And until we meet again, happy reading.